This is one of two trusty Panasonic HDC TM300s that I possess. I use these in conjunction with my work, and I often go on to site visits, and doing so I throw one of these into my briefcase, no protection, just as it is, and it does an excellent job normally of recording all the information that I require. Now, the important part of that introduction was the fact that I go on to site visits, and here we have on top of this camera a lovely Dolby 5.1 surround sound microphone system. It works extremely well, not studio quality I hasten to add, but it still works extremely well except in very windy conditions. Now, there is a wind cut system built into there as a filter which takes out a lot of the wind noise, but it's far from perfect. I have seen several attempts of people trying to block the wind noise with sort of some dead cat material, this sort of fluffy stuff. Now, I've recently purchased this from a materials store, and it wouldn't be my first choice of colour, but it was the only material colour that they had in with these very long hairs. So what I'm going to do is try and make my own little dead cat system which sits on the top there as a wind muffler. The only way that you could think about putting something in this area here would be to almost stick it on, and I certainly didn't want to do that to permanently fix it to the camera. So what I've done, on the side of the camera we've got this cold shoe device which hides behind a little cover. It might seem a strange place for it, but it has got a very good possible use, and I thought that I could use that to make a little frame, as you can see here, which plugs into there. So that acts as a little frame for my wind muffler that I can take on and off, and it's no longer fixed to the camera. Now, the muffler itself I've made by stitching some of this hairy material that I've just shown you into a little tube. Now, I'm not the world's best at sewing, but my wife said if you want to do it yourself, so I have done. It started off life as about an 80mm square, and all I've done, I've turned it inside out so that the hairs are inside, and stitched along the top of the seam here to hold it all together. So when we turn it inside out, which in itself is quite an interesting feat, when we can finish up turning it inside out, there we go, we've got a little tubular dead cat. Now we can slide that onto this frame because it stretches just a bit, and we can tuck it down the back of the frame like that, and then we can just clip it into the cold shoe device like that. Now, just make sure that we don't have any hairs over the front of the lens there. I know it looks like somebody with a badly fitting wig, which is why I wouldn't keep it on there all the time, but for the few applications where I need to reduce the wind, this does a superb job. So I made it so it springs in, so I just pull that little handle there and the whole thing just lifts out. How did I make the frame? Well, the frame was made from some 1.5mm stainless steel welding rod. Right, so the first thing we're going to do is leave ourselves around about 4 inches of material, and we're going to hold the pliers tight, and we're also going to push the wire with this part of our finger, but at the same time we're going to do it hard right up against the pliers. So I'm pushing right tight against the pliers, and I'm trying to create a 90-degree bend, which is quite a tight bend. I'm now going to leave around about 10mm between here and here, and I'm going to bend this time by holding the wire further away. Now, as you see, as I hold the wire further away, I'm not going to get a tight bend. I'm actually going to get much more of a radius, and I can check to see whether that radius fits in here, which, as you can see at the moment, it doesn't fit particularly well. What I can do is go back with my pliers a little bit and push further round. That's fine. It just about fits in now, which is great, because now what I can do is I can carry on. I can open this up a little bit and I can carry on bending this now, and I'm going to bend it so that it goes back on itself like that, and then I'm going to come down here a little bit and bend it back out. Try and make sure you keep things nice and straight and in line. And now we can try and fit it in, and as you can see, it doesn't fit in, but when I pull this part over, it does, and it locks in. Right, well, that's what we're trying to achieve. So while it's in there, what I'll do is I'll just pull this back a little bit like that, so that when I knit these two together, I should be able to pull it out like that. And if I want a little less tension, all I need to do is just put a little bit more bend in the bottom there. Now that's the important part of this done, so that I can put it in and withdraw it. What I'm now going to do is relatively unimportant, but I'm going to leave, I don't know, I suppose we're talking about 50mm from the end here to here now. I'm going to put a bend with the pointy part of the pliers. I'm going to put a bend right back on itself like that. Now here I've got a pair of sort of croppers, but you can do this with a pair of heavy duty side cutters. I'm just going to cut the end off and then close it up just to make it nice and safe. So there's my little handle, and that clips in nicely. So now what I've got to do is a bit of metal sculpture that makes this form around here. But before I form it around here, I've got to bring this bend forward so that I follow that red line round there basically. So my first move is to hold the pliers there, take it out of the camera, and again remember, if we want a tight bend we have to push right against the pliers to get a tight bend. So we'll bend that at 90 degrees and we'll go back and check it again. That looks pretty reasonable. And now what we want to do is to follow that red line round there. So what I've got to do is again hold the pliers where I want the bend to be, but this time remember, it's not in line with this, it's much more at 90 degrees. Check again. And there we are, we're in about the right position there. So what we've got to do now is to form this so that it comes across here approximately to where the underneath the 3 moss. So we've now got to bend this piece here and form this piece. So I'm going to bend it up a little bit and gradually. So as you can see, that's not too bad. So now we need to go across the back of the camera roughly underneath the 3 moss. So that's about there somewhere. So we can now take this out again, and we've got to put a 90 degree bend across there. That bend there, as you can see, is not very true to that bend, so what I've got to do is make sure that I true that up as well, so that roughly that and that are parallel to each other. Okay, that should be a good start. So let's try it again. So now we need to go back roughly beyond the back of the microphone, which is here somewhere. So again, we will hold this with our pliers in approximately the right position, which is here. And we put another 90-degree bend on. Now it's keep taking it out every time, a little bit awkward at the time, but we'll put another 90-degree bend on there, tight. And now what we've got to do is to match this radius here with this piece here. So the first thing we need to do is get it up to the right angle. As you can see, that looks to be a roughly matching the alignment of this bit here, and then we can start working on the radius again. A little bit more on the back end here. That looks pretty good alignment. We'll just check that, see what that looks like. Could do with coming up a little bit. Okay, and then finally we'll put the last bend on, which will be about there somewhere. And that last bend has got to come across here to match this. And what I'm going to do is to carefully tease it on the inside of there. We can now just bend it around a little bit. We've got the basic shape sorted out now. So I will now just cut the excess off, and bend it around until I get this approximately in line with that, and we're probably getting close to being there now. So let's just pop that in and see how that looks. That's not too bad. Now, as you can see, it's not a perfect fit along there, and it's not a perfect fit around there. But when we slip the windsock on, like this, and just push it over the back edge so that it covers over the wires, we've got so much fluff on the underneath here that it doesn't really matter that there's a gap in the frame. So now I should just sort of push that on. And there we are. Another badly fitting wig. Well, I hope that's been useful to you. And hope it's given you one or two inspirational ideas to maybe make something similar for your own camera.